Astrocytes are a glial cell. So whenever you hear the term glial, let that automatically ring in your mind and say support cell. Okay? So the astrocytes are a type of glial cell. Now, look over here. I've got another one called microglia. Micro, small, glia, glial. This is a small cell, but it functions in a different way. It works as like a white blood cell, going around eating up dead cell debris, waste, anything that might be considered a toxin in the fluid. So it's another support cell. And I've always, they say that, and I guess it's true, the more glial cells you have, the smarter you are. They claim that Einstein, like when they tested his brain tissue, had tons of glial cells. And I'm like, could I just have a few?
Is there a drink for it?
I know, right? Could I just a few? Just a little bit of a transplant or something? And so this structure that we get right here, isn't that pretty cool? Now, one I didn't mention because this should have been covered in part 1. Did they talk to you about the oligodendrocytes?
Yes.
What's the, okay, I heard one yes.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, I think what they do is like speed up conduction.
They are part of the myelin, okay? The oligodendrocyte, this is where I said that even, even though we're saying it's unmyelinated, we still have some myelin. The difference now, okay, the oligodendrocyte, once again, does all this spreading out, okay, going to the axons of neuron, all right? But this time, rather than having like a single cell, like the Schwann cell, wrap, the oligodendrocytes it's just whoosh and neat, making all this wrapping around all these different axons. So it looks like they're not myelinated, but they are, but they're more like laid in the myelin, with some of it just gently wrapping around it, okay? Even though it's myelinated, it's not as myelinated as the ones with the Schwann cells, if that makes sense. Okay, so we've got this blood-brain barrier, okay? We've got this brain barrier system, and this is sort of a view, trying to show you like a little blow-up of a little section of your brain, okay, to kind of give you an idea of some of this protection. And when we look at this, even though we've got all of this protection, we can see that there's also protection for the blood to the cerebrospinal fluid, because that astrocyte is there, kind of saying, whoa, you can't come in. No, go away. And so we kind of get this control between the cells.
So is this the type of question that would be on a test?
This is the type of question, yes. Now, and Destiny, I'm glad you asked that question. Can I pick on you for a minute? Sure. Okay. Everything I say is important. Okay? I'm not standing up here just talking for my health or the fun of it. All right? Every single piece of information I'm giving you is important.
It's just a lot of information. I'm trying to tie it all together.
I understand. So, now we've got this blood-brain barrier, this barrier system, okay? The job is protection. The job is controlling the materials that can get through. We can get water through, we can get glucose, and we can get materials that are lipid soluble. Because remember, at this point, we are at the cellular level. First day of class, or maybe it was the second, what did I say? That everything we talked about, what level did I say it was going to get to? The cellular level. And at the cellular level, everything is controlled by that plasma membrane. So, we're at the point where, okay, we're going to see water, we're going to see some glucose, and then something that could be lipid soluble. Because the plasma membrane is a phospholipid. It is a lipid material. So therefore, something lipid can get through. Now, that means we can have the oxygen, we can have the CO2, but now, I forgot my other parentheses. Alcohol, caffeine, nicotine, anesthetics. I could have gone on with the list. What does that tell me? We gotta be careful. Okay. Yeah. Definitely. But toxic substances. Toxic substances that we are purposely exposing ourselves to. Okay? I mean, unless, it's a hostage situation or something and you're being forced, to smoke the cigarette or something else. Just note my term, smoke. Okay? Drink. Take or consume. Y'all get my point? Mm-hmm. Okay? For the most part, yes. Okay? A lot of it illegal. So some states legal, but some, but then other stuff. Okay? Other stuff that's illegal. These substances are made to go through this lipid soluble membrane.
Oh, I was just gonna ask you, how does that? So if that's toxic, how does that help medically?
Now, thinking about medical marijuana.
Yeah.
Well.
No.
But are people here?
Oh no, yeah.
Is it
Oh
good?
yeah. Yeah. Marijuana can be very.
No, medical marijuana.
Oh well, it's all marijuana.
Yeah.
Medical just means you got a prescription for it. And so, if they show up at your door knocking and be like, oh, what is this? You can go, I got a prescription. No, I'm joking. Don't touch that.
Here.
Okay.
Virginia, that's passed here though?
Yeah, there's medical.
Oh, I didn't know that was
Yeah,
here.
because I had a cousin who passed away with ovarian cancer. And at the end, because there was so much pain and everything, she was actually being given a pill that was pure THC. Yeah. Now medical, that I don't know. Okay, I have to think about that. But no, it does have a lot of medical purposes. Okay. However, all right, remember what smoking does to your lungs. Okay, and that means smoking anything. All right, can damage. All right, so that's pretty much, the same. So these toxic substances, they're made to go through this lipid-soluble membrane, and therefore we get the effects that we do. Okay, for example, if you take a drink of alcohol and you get that effect, you have a nice little buzz, and be like, okay, it's because the liver and the blood haven't had time to filter out that toxin. All right? It's gotten to the brain before it got to the filtration systems.
So with alcohol or anything, does that go through those 8 steps we went over with the blood cleansing and then to the liver?
No, if you take in alcohol, okay, alcohol, because it's going through the digestive system has a direct connection to the blood supply. So it goes directly to the blood supply. And if you think about it, every time the heart beats, it's sending 15% to the brain. So therefore, that little bit of consumption, a whole lot of it gets directly to the brain. And because it gets through these protection cells and everything, it can affect the neuron directly. Therefore, the effects of the alcohol.
When brain infection occurs or things like botulism get through and they have effects on the brain, is that because they're damaging the astrocytes, or is that?
They're damaging the actual neurons. They're actually damaging the actual tissue.
How do they get through the blood-brain barrier, though?
That's just it. Like, you know, it's something that is making it through these lipid portions. So a lot of times when something has made it into the actual tissue, the actual neural tissue, a lot of times they can't identify why or how it got there.
Yeah, I didn't think alcohol could damage your brain until I almost lost my dad last semester, and he was a really bad alcoholic, and he was lucky to live, but he has permanent brain damage from.
Now you know why.
Right. And
because it goes
damaged.
and directly affects the actual neuron itself.
So what about like the microglia? Are they not able to?
They're not able to. Microglia, for the most part, their job, even though they're present, because this barrier system is so effective with what comes through the blood capillary, they don't really have to be that busy, okay? So microglia, like for example, one of the things that, okay, you know how like we have all these shows now about crime scene investigation, okay? I mean, it's like, how many more can we make? And then I sit there and I'm like, they did that? I mean, like, oh, that's just bad. You know, and so, like, people who might die of a brain injury, okay, like a blunt force trauma to the brain, one of the things that identifies that, microglia at that point are heavy in number because they're trying to protect the brain tissue from it being severed and entry now being possible. But other than that, they just kind of, nah, I gotta work today, I'm good, I got a day off. Yeah, okay. So they don't really have to work that hard.
So what's a brain aneurysm then?
An aneurysm is going to, that picture, see that capillary that was there? That's where there's a weakness in the actual wall of that blood vessel. And that means that blood vessel, rather than being nice and round, it poops out a point and blood gets to fill up in that area. Now, it can withstand a little bit of that, but you got to think about every time the heart beats, there's a blood pressure coming through. Okay, so blood pressure, and that makes it go until it bursts. And then once it bursts, all that blood that was stuck in that punching, that poofing out of the capillary of blood vessel goes all over the brain tissue.
Can you come back from that?
It depends. It depends.
To grow back, that's what I was going to
Or
ask.
do you fix that? Or
Well, I think
how
there's
do you
a
fix
surgery,
that?
right? You can have the surgery if you catch it, right?
If you catch it in time,
Right.
it can be surgically removed. However, it's very dangerous, and some people are actually just prone to them. They're going to just have them all throughout their brain tissue with nothing they can do. They're like a ticking time bomb. So,
How
yeah.
would you know those symptoms? Maybe headaches?
You
or
have
something?
symptoms, usually headaches. And it's usually a headache like you've never had before. I mean, any of you had migraines? Okay? It's worse than any migraine you could ever have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So the brain is amazing. I mean, it's an amazing organ for me. Now, some of the other stuff that can get through, well, look at this. Sodium. Remember how I talked about the voltage gates. We got to have the sodium. All right? Potassium's got to be there because we've got to make sure we get stuff regulated back and forth across these neurons. Once again, we're at the cellular level, okay? Because it's actual control across that membrane. Chloride. What? Chloride? What do you think of with that? Not the teeth, with fluoride. Chloride. Do what? Chlorine? Bleach? That's what I think about. Okay? Wait a minute. I got that in my body? Yes, you do. Okay? And it's actually beneficial to cells. It's just it's in small amounts. Okay? But we need it. All right? We need it. The waste products. Well, these cells are active. Okay? Remember, neurons don't duplicate. What you are born with is what you've got. That's it. Their job is to simply make their product, which is their neurotransmitter. When you hear the term neurotransmitter, what do you think about? Huh? What? But do you know some names of them? Some names of neurotransmitters? Serotonin, epinephrine, dopamine. Okay? You've got all these different names.
Is leptin?
Leptin is, hold on just a second, because that's going to be with the gut-brain connection. Leptin is, yes, it's going to be a form or a way that there is communication between the gut and the brain. Because leptin, if I'm remembering correctly, leptin is one that helps control the hunger, appetite, the satiation, and all that sort of stuff, if I'm remembering correctly. And people who have an issue with leptin, I think they are associating that with being obese. But don't quote me on any of that. That's just coming right off the top of my head right now. Okay? So you know, it's just, I have to go back and look it up. So yeah, you know, we've got all these neurotransmitters, and that's their job. At this point, that's all the neuron wants to do. Neuron wants to make its product. Everything else, leave me alone. Give me what I need to make my product, and everything else go and function the way you should. Like I said, medications, they have to be altered to get through this system. They have to be made in a way that they dissolve in the fats so that they can make it to the neuron. So, if we look at the brain, now, in the last chapter, we talked about the spinal nerves. The nerves that are going to exit from the vertebra.
Wait, no.
I think everybody's trying to get straight with their PowerPoint. Is this where I messed y'all up?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think we have it. No. So should we disregard all the ones prior?
Yeah, the ones that up to this point. So,
No, brain might matter, we don't need that.
Oh, I did that. I'm sorry. I didn't copy this one. I didn't copy this one for you. I apologize. Let's see. I thought I had
We're
them.
safe to reprint 14. I'm just like.
Okay, so I think the next two I didn't add. I apologize for that. So, yeah, the next two. This one and the next one. So, if we think about the brain, this time the nerves that are going to be associated with the brain that are going to exit are cranial nerves. And we've got 12 pair of those cranial nerves. So with the brain, yes, it's a part of the central nervous system. It is very well protected. It is protected by bone, the skull. Okay, so it's a very well protected organ. It's also the control center for a lot of our body functions. And that is really